you're going to see / going downward, the pause button, right? You see it all the time.
Yeah.
Those 2 slashes equal the pillars of Yakin and Boaz in the Mason rituals in front of the Temple of Solomon. Before you enter the temple, right? Entertainment. Enter to go into your mind, right? So every time you watch something on your black mirror, as I've asked before, does your screen become your shrine? It's in every single home. And again, I'm not saying that we can't use it because no weapons used against us shall prosper. However, demonically speaking, this is what they're thinking. And you're hovering over that with either an arrow, right? Which Gilgamesh, Cupid, they had an arrow. The heart was supposed to be affiliated symbol of Baal. A lot of people don't know that, but you're hitting that every time in the metaverse. Heart, right? That's like programming, for crying out loud.
Aloha and welcome to another show, guys. I'm sitting with Brandon Kroll today, researcher and host of Daily Manna Podcast, where he breaks down faith, power structures, language, and authority through history, theology, and philosophy. But before we get into it, make sure you follow, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an episode. And please share this with someone who really needs to hear it. Also, if you want to support this show, please head over to my Patreon. I'm adding another tier called Keala, which means path in Hawaiian. In this tier, you can watch the same episodes on YouTube, but completely ad-free and usually a day or so before it goes live on YouTube. So if you want the full extended version, please be sure you join the Waiola Tier, because that's where I can post what YouTube won't allow. And guys, keep your eyes open for my storefront coming soon. I will be having shirts and mugs and even my handmade jewelry. I will share those details as soon as it's ready. Today, Brandon and I go deep. We start with the big question of authority, control, and what it means to be set apart. And we connect it to the world we're living in right now. The conversation runs about 3 hours, but the most intense parts is not going to be on YouTube. Now, let's bring Brandon into this conversation. Enjoy the show. Well, aloha, Brandon, and welcome to the show. It's been a while since we last spoke. I hope that you've been doing well between that time and now.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful.
Basking in the joys of life.
Well, when you're here the last time, you went deep into, I think it was the rise of the technocrats and the role of Doge, yes, in that landscape. So that conversation really opened up some new ways of thinking about control, influence, and symbolism, and how it all played out in the world. And today we're talking even further, and we're asking a question that's been on a lot of people's mind. So we're going to talk about the curse of Archons Statist or saint. So I'm really excited to hear about that. So I'll let you take the reign.
Perfect. Yeah, it was funny because right when, maybe that's why we're doing the show today, Elon was just saying something with brain surgeries that they're going to start incorporating that chip stuff. And I'm chuckling because I'm reading the comments underneath it, and somebody said, didn't like old evangelicals say something about some Antichrist-like figure and doing brain chips and stuff like that? And now this is the same group cheering it on. And then somebody else said, I'm not even religious, but Trump is definitely the Antichrist. Like, and I'm going like, wow. Even those who are not of the faith are literally starting to scratch their heads saying, maybe that Bible stuff's not so kooky as it sounds. Like some of this might be coming into fruition. Hold on. Let's bring that up. And one more click and we should have it up close. There we go.
Awesome.
Can we see?
Yeah, oh, there. That's perfect. Yep.
Perfect. So yeah, you were asking a little bit prior, was it something about AI? And yes, and AI. I really like I really like breaking this stuff down for folks. I actually have one playing right as we're talking, that I thing they do. Breaking down the concept of usury. I could probably do that for you in February if you're interested in that particular episode.
Yes.
um, but yeah, the Archons, Titans, Nephilim, they have many names, but basically I'm going to be breaking down etymology of how I've come to become an anarchist. A lot of the starting couple slides going to be explaining what exactly it is I believe, because I've had a lot of people say, oh, you're a liberal because you're always bashing Trump. No, I formerly voted for the guy twice. Now I don't vote anymore. How did I get to that point? Going to explain the concept of libertarianism, not libertarian party. Big difference. And a few other things that I have in my bio because, one, I think people should kind of gauge themselves, not necessarily the stuff that I have today. Gauge for yourselves what's a term, what's a word that you use to define yourself. And as we just said prior to the show, look into the etymology, the roots of words, right? And you will find the answer of many things. I think it was Confucius that said, and I'm paraphrasing because it'd be one of two interpretations, people lose their liberties and or freedoms is the variation here. Uh, People lose their liberties when words lose their meaning. If you don't know the meaning of words, well, then they can start doing all this stuff with their filing, tax codes, marriage certificates. I've been breaking that down where you can have what was the original terminology, common law versus getting married with the state, right? I've got a book on that. I've had some chats. It's very interesting, but this is why we should come together and ask ourselves some of these questions. And then statist or saint. At the end of it, you will kind of understand where I'm coming from. So first and foremost, let's break into the definitions here. And no, I'm not just a Google guy. I am actually reading a lot of books to come up with my answers, but I'm just giving people basics. It's Oxford here, which is one of the two standard for the English language, such as we have it. And a statist is an advocate of a political system in which the state has substantial or centralized control over social and economic affairs. And a saint, the word saint, before it was bastardized through the Catholic Church, it originates from the Latin word sanctus, meaning holy or set apart, right? Now, there was an individual, and I'm giving this as a for instance, he was messaging me because he read one of my inscriptions, and he says, oh, you think you're a saint? I'm watching you. Wait, what? I said saints, us saints, ecclesia, people who are set apart. And I messaged him. I said, what gives, bro? I said, I'm not saying that I am special or I'm putting a halo on the back of my head. I'm saying us saints, as in we are set apart in this world. And he's like, oh, yeah, I've been watching you and you're always bashing on Christians. No, I'm extorting the brother, right? What we should and should not be doing. And the definition you're coming from, he's from Spain. I said is very Catholic, and it might be influenced there from a Catholic background. Joke's on you, I'm not Catholic. And then I sent him some screenshots of what set apart means, right? Because I want him to know. Started arguing on the more. I said, this isn't worth it. Block. Because we're not going down that route. But the thing is, when we are saying, like, an antichrist makes war against the saints, if he's going by his definition, you're telling me all those people that we've solidified in stone, he's going to go to war against all of those things. Something tells me an antichrist wouldn't give a crap about that. But he would give a crap about someone who's set apart, right? Now, in the Hebrew culture, God was seen as set apart from his creation. That's what makes him perfect. That's what makes him divine. This is the significance of Christ, what was encapsulated within the human flesh of Christ. The flesh was of Abraham and Adam, but the spirit, right, that was of God. And what happens after Gethsemane, which means oil press, right? Christ is put on a cross, his body is crushed, his flesh is gone, right? And he's put in a grave. Now, did we kill God for 3 days? If you're going by the original Trinitarian, yeah, Satan succeeded in killing God. Wait, no. So you're telling me God was inactive for 72 hours? No. Did we kill an aspect of God? Yes. Well, what was that? Well, according to 1 John 1:14, the word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. Right? You also get Revelation 19:13, when Christ returned, his name is the Word of God. So they killed God's word, right? So here's the thing. If Satan has always been trying to manipulate God's word since the very beginning, right? The prophets will say, Christ will say, Thus saith the Lord. Right? God had said. Satan asked the question, did he really say that? Let's look at the fine print, right? He's trying to manipulate what is standard and what is set, right? Whereas man is always trying to invert it. So if Satan can kill God's word, which was the very thing that spoke everything into existence on creation, would you say he has the upper hand? Oh yeah, I just basically ripped out the tongue of the creator. Oh great, he's back. And this is what gives us life, is the word is what brings us back to life. It conquers death, flesh, perishing. Right? Only the word of God can reverse that. So that's the power of that. So therefore, as saints, right, we are in the world, not of the world. So if we are be in the world, but not of the world, as we get in that verse, we're supposed to be here, but we're technically now celestial colonists. Baptism representing the man dying, like in the deluge. We're drowning ourselves in the flood, but we're born again, right, rising again, to become spiritual. This is what we get when Nicodemus, right? John 3:6, that which is born of flesh is flesh, when he's asking, do I have to go back in my mother's womb? And that which is born of the spirit is spirit. So now that you've been baptized, you're now acknowledging, I'm here for a spiritual purpose, and I'm set apart for that, to influence and recruit people for the kingdom of heaven. So when I say saint, I mean someone who is set apart. Now, was that clear? Because I know that's a very confusing insight. I'm just making sure, because you're representing the audience. I'll gotta get down in the comments.
Yes, I understood.
And again, for other people who are going to be asking, well, okay. Another verse, a couple of them just to prompt some intrigue here. I think I covered some of this with you before, but he is Antichrist who denies the Father, big word, and the Son. 1 John 2:22. Okay, so every time I read the Son, I go, he is Antichrist who denies the Father and the Word. It's one and the same, because the Son of God is the Word of God, right? No man knows the day or hour except the Father in heaven. Now, if you're God's Word, yes, you know God's heart, you know God's mind, you know the Scripture, you know what's up to present, what you have to say, because you're living it, but you don't know when you're supposed to return, because only the Father knows that. But you're God's Word. You still go when you're spoken. You're God of your word. Hence, you sent your Son, right? So there's a little bit of that to consider, and there was a couple other ones, but that's again just prompting some thought as well. He's not a ventriloquist, right? This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Oh, thanks, Dad. Father, into thy hands I commit thy spirit. Right? There's some things that prompt here, and then Stephen being stoned. I see God the Father and the Son. So I'm not saying they're separate 100%. No, I'm saying you have to just be distinct. When you're saying the word of God, God's word is so powerful. Yes, it can create its own entity, but that is the only thing that can pass that barrier of a firmament. Anyways, that being said, I learned this when talking with Stephen Sizer. Phenomenal man. Again, it's something that I've always believed in. I did not know there was an actual word for what I believed in. I'm a covenantalist. Covenantalism, also known as the covenant theology, is a biblical framework that uses covenants to understand the Bible's structure. It's a reformed position that views the Bible through the lens of covenants, especially the covenant of grace. Basically, covenant basically says, originally, it was Old Testament Hebrews plus, with dispensationalism, they're going to tell you this. You had the Old Testament Jews, and now we get a bride of Christ. There's still an original contract with the Jews, but then you're going to have something different with Christians. And I'm thinking, wait. So if you're going by mikvah, or sorry, not mikvah, the huppah, sorry, the marriage tent that was at the base of Mount Sinai, right? When we covered that one before. And then we get Jeremiah 3:8, where I said, the God's been divorced episode. So you're basically telling me, wait, so he was originally married to them. Jeremiah 3:8 gives him the bill of divorce. And then somehow we continue that they're still there. But what? So Christ is taking a concubine by inducting in Christians? He has a mistress on the side? He's now a polygamist? No. Because then we get Galatians 3:28 and 29. There's neither Jew nor Greek, slave or free. Again, go watch God's Been Divorced from a whole lot more verses. We're not focusing on that, but that is basically what I've come to say, is that we have Old Testament, and now it is adapted. We are grafted in with Romans 11, right? That there's neither specialities, and the ones who were cast out is because people who weren't believing and actually following what the word says. New Testament is basically updated user terms of agreement, but adding in Gentiles if they follow the statutes here. Does that make sense? Just wanting to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to get too heavy because that's not my main thing. I'm also what you would consider a contrarian. Now, a lot of the definitions that I look into this, they're saying it can heavily be categorized in the area of finances. Like you're basically a rogue maverick when everybody's betting against the grain, saying Microsoft will never take off in so many years. But that one person says, well, contrary, I think there's a benefit of a doubt because you didn't consider all these other variables. I'm going to put full chips on the table and hope, place my bet here. And that contrarian thinking, the salmon swimming against the stream, you might say, is kind of what makes them the phenomenon in their world, because they challenge the status quo of saying, I'm actually going to see if this is going to pan out, right? So basically it means you're not part of a group collective thinking, right? They're typically seen as courageous, they're unconventional, and they're counterintuitive thinkers. They're able to withstand herding pressures and even abuse the abuse from crowd-following conformists. Now, something that really prompted this is me when I was seeing what was going on in 2020. Everybody else had to go with the narrative on the TV. Oh, you have to get this because the president signed an executive order. And I'm like, I don't care if the emperor of the world signed the thing. I'm not doing that because that's my own autonomy, right? So even though the crowd is all saying we got to do this, the contrarian will sit and ask, why? So you might say Socrates, right? That was the thing that was really ticking them off, because I really like Socrates, and the other philosopher I really like is Diogenes. He was the cynic. Socrates would ask the Socratic question, why do you believe what you believe? Right? And he wanted to know the answer of how is society structured, right? So I'll ask our leaders, I'll ask the politicians. Surely they would know because they're in power. And they didn't have an answer for him. So he'll go over and I will go and ask the people who construct all of our great temples and all the great things that we live in with our houses, the fountains, everything. And they didn't have the answer. So he's going from person to person, and eventually he's like, okay, so a lot of people, they're doing their things, but they don't really know why they do their things. They just get caught up in routine and structure. Eventually, charges are laid up against Socrates for corrupting the youth of Greece, for asking why things are the way they are. That is very much a contrarian. So again, when you're asking the Socratic questions, you were asking basically, okay, but why do you believe that? Break it down for me. Which is, I think, what they say, critical thinking. Okay, yeah, I was gonna cut that down. I meant to take out a couple of these because, don't want to go too lengthy for unnecessary purposes. So this is basically a hierarchy. You can get this from the book of Think Again by Adam Grant. A hierarchy of thinking styles. A learner, they say that I might be wrong, and you're surrounding yourself with people who challenge your thought process and changing your mind in the face of stronger logic and evidence. Now, this is where I'm warning people who are watching, people who are professional debaters. An individual I might infer with this is be Andrew Wilson, because while he does have an audience that appreciates him, he's a little bit crass at times, which is not saying that's wrong. Somebody's need to do that for a debate. But at the same time, you can't just type W, which means win. Can't just type W every single time and say, self-adulation. This person is just, you're watching for the reason that you think your champion or your team, right? Like we have with sports, your guy can never lose. That's the wrong mindset to get in. If you are going to sit down and not debate as in politics, you're asking, okay, two of these guys claim to be experts in their field, or they both have a lot of facts to bring to the table. The learner, right, someone who's generally trying to cipher for truth, you're going to be asking yourselves, okay, who's making the best argument today for me to walk away with? And it doesn't mean you go with one side or you choose the other. There might be good points on each side. And you learn to walk away and say, all right, this was the good part of this guy. This is the good part of this guy. I'm going to make my own decision at the end of the day. Right? It doesn't mean you follow thereafter, because man is flawed. The critical thinker, that might be wrong. You're engaging with the diverse sources of information and questioning their credibility. So while you're being presented with facts, you're not just going, okay, my guy's going to answer this, so whatever his answer is, I'm going to agree with that. That's what I call like a microwave philosophy. Fast food. I don't have time to think of that for myself. So if my guy's really smart and articulate and really well-researched and stuff like that, I'm going to take whatever he says as the answer to this guy. The other one's saying, he did give an answer, but I'm not sure if that is 100% correct. I'm going to go fact check or look into that for myself. That's what somebody should do. The contrarian. You're all wrong. This is where you've evolved to the point where you can see both people arguing on a debate and you stand up and say, okay, I don't care about status. I don't care about your credentials and pedigree. I'm willing to actually stand up because I actually research, I read, right? I'm willing to stand up and say, I challenge that. Okay, well, who are you? Well, bring me on the stand. I'm not saying you have to do that, but I'm just saying this is a for instance, or you're thinking that. You're finding the flaws in other people's arguments, but being blind to the limitations of your own. Now, this is where I do object to that, because as a contrarian, you should be analyzing all the variables. And that's actually something I get from a lot of people is you're overanalyzing everything. But that's kind of good sometimes, because that means I'm thinking of all the possible contingencies, right? The thing is, you just have to learn to pull the trigger, which I'm getting better. Not perfect, but getting there. Right? And that's what it should be. You're evolving over time. They're all wrong, we're right. A politician, right? You start creating basically a cult. Preaching your side's gospel while prosecuting the other side's views, morals, ethics, call it what you will. And this is something that I really don't like, because you're immediately ostracizing the other side as opposed to seeing the qualities for consideration. I actually, once upon a time, applied to work both at the Turning Point USA and Daily Wire. Why? Did I agree with both platforms? No, not at all. In fact, I've always been kind of libertarian or anarcho-centrist. What does that mean? I actually see humanitarian aspects within the liberal side of things, right? But I don't really see too much of the right wing, whatever you want to call them. I don't see them entertaining that compassionate element. But I would be really interested in moderating and saying, have you considered this point of view? Why? Because we're all human at the end of the day. And we should coming together as a collective saying, I don't care about that politician or this party. I care about you as the person. Well, no. We don't do the politician thing. So again, why was I probably not accepted? Because I don't really do politics in the way that they want to do it. I like to mediate. They like to have diversity to the point of they're bad guys, we're the good guys. That's not the way a Christian should be thinking, right? Blessed are the peacemakers. A cult leader, I am always right in treating your own thoughts as gospel, which is only a difference of a degree between the politician, right? So again, contrarian, you notice he's kind of in the middle of this said pyramid, but he's also, again, I would say right between the critical thinking, because it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not considering all the contingencies, but you're kind of within that vein of thinking where you should be critically thinking and saying, while I know I agree with this guy, I don't lose my individuality, right? Of becoming part of whatever he represents, or taking that adjective to define myself. The power of the contrarian thinking. You're always questioning the official consensus. You're embracing skepticism. It means, and again, skeptic means to observe from a distance. And you're seeking alternative perspectives, right? Which, again, the other side did not say. So some people, they bash a little heavily on the contrarian, but it's good to actually, seek other perspectives here. And you're identifying hidden opportunities, right? Where do I see the potential of all of this? Even though this one's saying go here, go there, I'm going to raise my hand and say, well, I'll actually talk to you. Well, you're nobody. That's not the point. I'm another human being, and I think I have a right to say something because I read. I wrote this down the other day. If you don't read, then you're not ready. Well, I hate reading. I'm sorry, but that's kind of what it. I'm not saying, like, again, you have to be in the books for 8 to 12 hours a day, but you should read a little something because reading is basically sitting down and having a conversation with your mind, right? And you're reading it of a literacy, but you're also entertaining what did somebody else think? What does somebody else say? And what is their perspective, right? If you want to be a good listener, you might want to start reading. It's a great way to start practicing for that. So, we were just talking a little bit of similar about this before, but a lot of times people don't know these words. Do you know what an iconojule and an iconoclast are?
No.
Cool. Well, remember to hit that smash like button. That means you're an iconoclast. Otherwise, you're an iconojule, which means somebody who loves images, somebody who basically will venerate like the Virgin Mary and or an image of a saint. I've seen this a lot with the Orthodox Church, and I'm like, well, you're basically Diet Coke Catholicism. You get rid of the Virgin Mary, but you're still doing So I was like, why are you still doing that? Well, it's sacred. No, it's not. It's holy. No, it's not. And they didn't get this till Theodora II, who basically reinstituted in the Orthodox Byzantine Empire the allowance of having icons in churches, whereas the other ones were saying, you shall not make any graven image. If anything, we should smash that because what are you doing? You're bestowing a form of idolatry of saying this thing is like an intermediator, like Orthodox Church will call them windows into heaven, right? And I think that's something that, no, we should not be having windows into heaven. A lot of this stuff that I'm reading in the books, it was getting to the point where they're saying the idol or the structure, the image, had healing powers. Other people were starting to make these images the godparents of their children. It was making me go, I can't say I support the violence on both sides, but I do understand the idea is that we have to have a standard. I don't support this and I do support that. But for me, even as a kid, I grasped it about like 6. And I said it to my mom's boss, and I still remember this very distinctly. She said, I was real hurt because I was babysitting Brandon today, and he told me that Catholics aren't real Christians. And I'm like, well, obviously, I don't see what the problem is here because you worship Mary. And it's like, no, I don't. Again, as a kid, I still understood that premise. That does seem weird. Why are you praying to a statue, or why are you putting special? And again, some people are going to say, well, it doesn't. It's from what I'm reading. Some people might have started out with a good intention. This is what it means to us. 15, 20 years down the road, it becomes an idol, and it does all the things I just listed. So I'm an iconoclast. And I like what Oliver Wendell Holmes said here. Rough work, iconoclasm, destroying images, but the only way to get at the truth. And the way I would sum that up is, what does he mean by that? Well, if it wasn't a form of idolatry, it wouldn't irk you so much when someone tells you that is exactly what it is. So to get to the truth, it's like, okay, so if I pee on the Virgin Mary right now, are you going to have a problem with this? Well, that's holy. Like I told this to my buddy. He's like, well, as a former Catholic, like it feels wrong. I know what you're saying, but it feels wrong. Right. Because you've had it programmed in you for so long. This is sacred. This is holy, right? You're not supposed to do that. But an iconoclast is saying this means nothing. It's material. Now, this is where we come into the Diogenes aspect of things. He would basically interrupt a lot of like Plato's seminars. And one time he ran into one of his lectures and he had ripped off all the feathers of a chicken and held it up and said, "Behold, Plato's man." Basically calling out the foolishness of his whole concept of what he was promoting. Now, was it an extreme gesture? Yes. Sometimes he would actually live naked in a barrel, for crying out loud. But at the same time, he would prompt very profound thoughts. For instance, when Alexander the Great was going through Greece, he had heard of the great Diogenes, and he goes up before him, and similar to the story of Esther, says, "Tell me something profound," or something like that, and I will give you half of my kingdom. Diogenes looks up from his barrel, and he says, "I only ask that you stand out of the light." Kind of a double meaning. One, you're blocking my sunshine. That is all that I need today. Secondly, you're not the great. You are nobody. You're just another human being. And at first, Alexander was like, you know what? Touche. Touche. And those kind of things, I think they call it a laconic response, where you say something very with few words as possible, but something very profound. And this is kind of what I was saying. Is like, I appreciate once in a while the extreme, because then everybody goes, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But then you're like, pause and think, why did I just do that? Like Socrates. Now ask yourselves, why do you think that was important for you to worship this? Or are you saying you didn't, but you're upset when I do this? Right? I had another gal message me, Orthodox Church. She was getting very upset. How dare you support such a demonic ideology as iconoclasm, blah, 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 blah. You don't know the true history of the church and St. Constantine. I was like, wait, hold up. Whoa, 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 whoa. St. Constantine? The guy who saw the image of the cross and he heard go forth and conquer and kill basically with this thing? The image of the cross? You calling him a saint? I didn't know saint. That's a killer. Okay. Anyways, so is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. What is an iconoclast today? Well, they're rugged individuals. They're bold thinkers who don't give a hoot about what tradition calls for. Basically, they're people who will engage in or support of iconoclasm. They're called iconoclasts, and the term that has come to be figuratively applied to any individual who challenges the cherished beliefs or venerated institutions on the grounds that they are erroneous or pernicious. Basically, this is another thing that I've been working on when I'm doing debates. You know what an ad hominem is?
No.
Ad hominem is basically like what Trump will say. Oh, Sleepy Joe Biden. You'll make a very obvious remark about a common attribute, a flaw of your opponent. You could say, Fat Boy Billy, right? It's a catchy phrase. It's an insult, and then everybody starts fixating on that. Or messy hair, what's his face, right? And that's what everybody becomes.
That
Yeah.
Pocahontas lady, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
those would be,
Okay.
again, especially during a debate context, where you say that, and then everybody, again, it's like, that's now
They
the only
remember
thing.
it.
Right, that's the only thing I'm thinking about now when you're talking this whole time. I like doing ad hominems, not necessarily aimed at the individual, but at ideologies and institutions. What do you mean? For instance, and I did this to a guy at a cafe, and how it ended was very interesting. And I'll give you the for instance. He says he's a Catholic Christian. I said, okay, so let me give you my ideology of how I think this is incredibly flawed of you to take that adjective. What? You said you're a Catholic, correct? Yeah. Okay. So does that mean you stand by the horrors and all the stuff that happened during the Crusades? No, that was a different time. Okay, I was expecting that. You don't agree with all that. That was a different time, different guys, but still had the name Catholic affiliated with them, right? Yes. Okay. Do you side with the Spanish Inquisition that went on for over 400 something years and torturing individuals? No, different time, different place. I got it. But they still used your adjective Catholic in order to do all those things. Do you support all the atrocities that happened in the Indian reservation schools that were led by Jesuit Catholics? No. And we were eventually getting to the point. Do you support what the priests do? Blah, 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 blah. No. Okay. So why are you still taking that adjective to define who you are? Could you just say you're just Christian without having an adjective plus like the LGBT, right? This is where I was getting. So he gets up, nods, shakes my hand, and walks to the other side of the cafe. And I was like, that's a win. Because I just forced you to confront, okay, you took that adjective and I just brought in all the crap that comes with that. Because, oh, that's good. Again, is it the institution that did good or is it per individual that did good? I'm not saying that all Catholics, but I'm saying if you're putting that under the umbrella, is it the individual's actions that I'm appreciating, or is it the whole institution? Because the institution itself is incredibly flawed, right? The next one I'll go on is ideologies. What do you mean? Okay, let's go after Republican or Democrat. And I'll be listing all the stuff thereafter. I'm not going to go to huge, great detail, right? We can just pick a side, right? And we'll start breaking it down. But. Do you side with this? No. Manifest Destiny, for instance. Well, it was done by a Democrat. Basically, that we have the right to go and conquer the Native Americans, right? Because God willed this land to us. Well, I don't support them. Okay, cool. You say you don't, but then you support these, right? So at a certain point, you get into the like, so why is that adjective so important for you as the individual to have to claim that as you, who you are? And then you say immediately, disown it when push comes to shove and it's put under a microscope, and you're saying, well, that's not me. Okay, so if that's not you, then who are you without the adjective? Now, when I'm explaining the iconoclast, it's a concept, right? This is a concept of a belief system that I do believe in, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that I am part of a collective group. Like if I say libertarian, oh, you're libertarian party, blah, 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 blah. Libertarianism. What? Being an individual, right? What does that mean? I believe that I have the right with my own sovereign individuality to be who I am, right? And I also have the right to either be a jerk to somebody or to be a nice person to somebody. But that's up to me now as the individual. And this is where I should have put out here, but I didn't. I have the I Venn diagram, where you have the institutions, which could be colleges, universities, seminary schools, something of prestigious renown, right? That you have all listed in one sphere. And then you have ideologies. It could be philosophies, like I said. Well, Sartre said this and he was the best one. Nietzsche said this and he was the. Okay, but what do you believe? Well, again, you're always quoting somebody else, but I've never heard you actually write it down or articulate specifically your own words, right? Philosophy is a funnel. Somebody else said something. Now, what did you contribute to that? Do you contribute or do you just regurgitate what somebody else thought for you? And then finally, you come to the third circle, which is the individual. And as a Christian, right, it says, be ye in the world, not of the world. Come out of her, my people, lest ye receive of her plagues, as we read in Revelation. So yes, while I am interacting with institutions because I have to go to college, or again, I'm saying if this is what you're going through with life, I will bump into these ideologies of evolution and this thing. But am I going to take their adjectives and define who I am as a Christian? Or am I going to stay as a sovereign individual and say, you know what, while I'm in the world, I'm not of the world. I know what these things are, I can research them, but they're not going to define who I am. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, like I said, somebody does not have to follow what I'm saying. I'm just saying this is how I've come to my own beliefs, and I'm articulating per point how I've come to that conclusion. Now, when I did go to Turning Point USA about 6 years ago, 5 years, three, something like I don't know. It's been a few years. I took a test, and guess where I landed on that chart? Libertarian. Not near Rand, not near Reagan. I don't even know how he got into that category because he was big time outside, but I landed right here, right above centrist, right? And I was like, okay, that sounds about right. But when I took another test, again, they don't equate progressive, they don't equate independent, they don't equate libertarian. But when I did take that test on which part of this two-party scale that they have to narrow you down and funnel you in, I was pretty conservative, like 70%. I it's like you would think that would make people happy, right? And I'm showing them like this is the test I took, like this. Oh, you're one of us. No, I'm not. We have a lot of sentiments, right? But you're having to tie and filter everything through the Republican Party, right? And or Democrat, filling again, both sides here. Whereas Proverbs, I think it was 27:5 or is it 27:3? Go neither to the left nor to the right unless you stumble into evil. Again, you got man who is friends with the world is at enmity with God, James 4:4. You have Jeremiah 17:5. Foolish is the man who puts his face in flesh. And then Hosea 4:8:4. They nominate kings and select princes without my say. Yeah. Let's get into some of those points where I was like, yeah, I can't say I can go left or right, but I can entertain sentiments of both sides, right? Like I just was saying. And again, solutions, it could be cooperation, working with people, individualism. You might say, I read a book, um, Demanding the Impossible by Peter Marshall, breaking down the history of anarchism. And some of the things in there, I was like, totally disagree. Other things, I very much agree. Right? And I was thinking individual, yes, but if I did have to say cooperation, I'm a mutualist. What? Now, if you'll Google it, oh, socialism. No, mutualism more in the sense of we have a mutual need for having each other exist. For instance, the guy that they quoted, I think it was Kropotkin, he wrote a book called Quest for Bread. And he basically was using, I think the analogy was a rhinoceros out in Africa. And he has those little birds that fly over and they pick off all the ticks on them. Now, he could run away and shake them all off, but guess what? I'm actually benefiting of us working together. You're still getting to eat. I'm still able to graze, and you're also getting rid of these blood-sucking parasites off of me. So there's a mutual reason I want you to continue living, and you're helping me out at the same time doing your own thing, right? That's kind of the concept of how I view that. Like, okay, so for instance, today, let's say I was over in Hawaii. Your husband is, what does he do for work?
He's a contractor.
Perfect. That is literally perfect. Okay. Say for the moment he's using the saw, and I run over and I say, hey, can I borrow your hammer? Now we're both working on the same job. This is a hypothetical situation here. And he's like, well, duh, because I want you to get done with that part so I can do my thing. Go ahead, grab the hammer. I'm not paying. I'm not doing any of these things. I'm just literally saying, could I borrow a tool? Because we both have a need of doing the same. Like at the end of the day, we're helping each other. So when they're saying cooperation, that's my mentality of this. Otherwise, I would very much like to do the job myself as individualism. But it doesn't mean I can't say I have to learn. Now, they'll say globalism or isolationism. Well, I don't believe in globalism, biblical cosmologist here, but again, that's neither here nor there with the argument. Or worldwide, or basically you might say isolationism. Now everybody might argue, oh, no, I'm not a nationalist. But I do think of more so the tribal perspective here. We have our own tribe. At the same time, don't be afraid to entertain the stranger. As we get in the Old Testament, right? If somebody comes to you, help give them a place to stay, give them some food, help send them on their way. That's kind of more of the perspective that I have. Isolationism, again, saints, people who are set apart. We have our own Christian community. You're welcome to join us, but at the same time, we have standards if you want to be part of us, right? Doesn't mean we're going to shy you away if you have questions, but if you do want to join, we do have some standards that we uphold. Why? Because we're trying to make God happy and we're working on each other. Discipleship, not going to church as in listen to the holy man and that's it, go home. We're actually working on each other because we want to see each other become better in the body of Christ, right? Freedom, security, all that stuff. Yes, I believe in warriors more so as opposed to, the way that we have things today in the world. Am I a textualist? Am I doctrinal? Well, again, textualist, I found it interesting. Very least means I like reading. What did the ancients say? And now I'm an anthropologist. Do you know what that word means?
I think so. No, just say no.
I'll elaborate. Again, sometimes I'll use words and then somebody will be staring and they'll be like 5 minutes later, I have no idea what that word means. And then I'll be like, I'm sorry. So I'm learning to ask. Slow myself down. Oh yeah. So anthropologist is the study of how ancient cultures lived, ancient societies lived, as opposed to just history. It's studying what did they do in their day-to-day lives. I've summed it up best this way. Why am I an anthropologist? Because I like asking the questions, why did they do what they did back then? And why did they believe what they believed? Because today, that helps me ask the question, why do I do what I do? And why do I believe what I believe? Again, a very Socratic mindset. I actually am studying how they did things, whether I approve or disagree, right? That's for me to analyze. And I'm reading texts, again, for instance, about the iconojewels or the iconoclasts. Both sides use a lot of violence to enforce their way. But I'm mainly gleaning the overall argument. Who had the better case to make here? Do we want to have a statue to remember Christ, or is it better to remember his spirit, right? And emulate the virtues of the person. Again, this is for me to decipher and to break down. Now, we're not going to go into all that right now if you're listening. Again, that's a whole nother presentation, but that's a for instance of why I would be a textualist. And then centralism or states' rights, again, this is neither here nor there, but I'm just saying if you're going on this scale, I do believe that voting to the extent is that we should be asking ourselves questions in an agora like fashion. Now, do you know what that is?
No.
Woohoo! All right. Agora was an
You
ancient
like to
Greek.
explain things, so
I do, but I don't
you
want
get
to.
happy.
I do. I was at the cafe the other day, and she was saying like she was asking something about the world going on. I says yes, we are at the precipice before we plunge headlong into the abyss. And she goes, that was a lot of big words. And I was like, okay, precipice. We're at the highest point before we plunge to the lowest point of our existence as humankind. She's like, oh, okay, I understood that. But again, this we're living in a world, like for another gal there, she didn't know what the word courtship meant. And this is the thing, like a lot of us are having conversations day to day, and nobody has any idea what the hell they're saying. Like I brought up that word the other day with the Shin Shidai when I was talking about the Star Trek thing, and you were saying in Japan, there's another way to say it, right? Is it the same pronunciation?
I forget now. Yes, yeah.
Something like that. But again,
Yeah, yeah,
he was
yeah.
arguing I didn't say it correctly, and I'm thinking,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
dude, he's saying it was like Sheen, like the Chinese clothing brand. I'm like Sheen, Shin, Shine. We're speaking Babel for crying
Yeah.
out loud. We're gonna argue the semantic. Like I said, like there's people who still spell color over in the UK with a O-U-R. We're gonna really argue about all these little semantical things. No, again, it's like I find that so silly because it's kind of like we have the root Latin language between Italy, Spain, and France and stuff like that, right? And I was talking to my buddy Sam, and he said that's very similar to what they have with China, Japan, and Korea. There's like a root etymology language, but it had variations as it traveled and migrated, right? So, anyways, I think that pretty much covers that. Now, libertarianism. And I'm only giving this because a lot of times libertarians, yes, we do fall in the middle. Personal freedom, economic freedom. And again, I say trade. I don't really like economy. Because the biggest thing that I've noticed, and I'll probably cover that when I do that presentation with you, because I think you would actually really appreciate it. I think the audience would as well. The concept of money. Anytime capitalism or communism is dictated and regulated by the state, usually it's going to take somebody's lives. Well, capitalism doesn't do that. Yes, it does. You invade third world countries in order to get the resources to go on your shelves. If you've never looked into the banana wars, please buy a couple books on it. I guarantee you it will start challenging you. There's one I think called Bitter Fruit. Just again, type banana wars on Amazon and Smedley D. Butler's War is a Racket. That'll get you started and going, okay, I see what you're talking about. For me, not to say that I can't have a banana, but after reading what I've read, it's kind of like putting blood in a blender. Yeah, I know, right? It's kind of crude, but that's unfortunately the way I'm seeing it. Is in order for me to get this, somebody else had to die, not an animal, another human being, right? And in order for me to have free trade, somebody else had to be extorted in their country, right? So I'm not too keen on the concept of money. It's more of a, you know what? There's a mutual benefit here. I would really like to have a coconut, something from Hawaii. Would you like a cup of clam chowder? Because this is something from New England, right? You know what I'm saying? Like there's a reason we can share, but I don't believe we have to take somebody's life in order to get this. And I don't believe in the concept of money. It's more of this is temporary. While we're here, we're giving to Caesar what's stupid his, but ultimately we're focusing how can we help our fellow human beings. Non-interventionist foreign policy, right? It's like, yeah, Christians, we don't believe in being aggressive. Should be, in theory, a robust national defense. Tribal, break it down a little bit. Yes, I do believe we should have warriors in men being able to defend themselves, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. A tolerance of other personal choices. Yeah, because as opposed to what I'm seeing in a lot of libertarian pages, I'm like, you're not libertarian. You're still a statist. What are you saying? You're supporting an idea That the government has to enforce what is the definition of legal upon somebody else. If somebody's arguing with me with that the government's telling me what is legal and what's not, it says the same government that accepts money from foreign interest groups, the same government that is accepting money from lobbyists, right? The same government that's basically doing insider trading. They're going to define for me what is legal and what is not legal. Yet if they commit perjury on the stand, they get away with it scot-free. Whereas if I don't abide or adhere to their rules of law, I get locked up because that's illegal. Don't give me this argument. Again, this is where I'm coming from, because the state is not my friend, right? Especially if you're a Christian. On the other side of this, yes, we respect others' property rights. However, where I differentiate, the Bible says that there is no such thing as property because I created it all. God. Have fun arguing with him on that. That's not me. We are sharing it for the time that we're here, but guess what? Dust thou art, dust thou shalt return. It's temporary. But at the same time, you're maintaining it for this time that you are here in your existence, right? Separation between church and state, yeah. We should not have gone Constantine with giving generously to help those in need, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with being a philanthropical individualist, right? I'll give freely. Don't think what your left hand or right hand is doing. Just give freely. If you have it, give it. If I'll give this up for instance. My sister was coming down to visit. She was coming down from Vermont. She wanted to visit my mom and dad. And they were saying if they could stay at my place. I'm like, I got 2 rooms. It's very cramped. Well, that's okay. No, like it's really cramped. Like there's, it's not gonna be good. There's 3 people. Or you have 3 people in your thing with a kid, and then you got me. That's 4 people in 2 rooms. That's gonna be very crowded, and he's an infant. And I was feeling really bad because I started thinking, oh, no reservation at the inn. You know what? Screw it. So I let them stay at my place. In hindsight, probably wasn't a good idea. Actually, dropped like 6 eggs in my freaking kitchen, but it's okay. Cause family. No, but again, it's just the idea. I'm going to offer that because yes, I do have room, but I'm just have to suck it up for a day or two. Ending corporate welfare. I don't believe the state should run that. But what do we hear about the early church? Take care of the widows and the orphans and stuff like that. And usually, I'm not saying you can't have these from plagues and whatnot, but usually widows and orphans would be the result of what? War. They were so adamant about Christians not joining the military back in the day because you were men of blood and empire that you would not be able to participate in the Eucharist, the body of Christ. You would not be able to take that sacrament. Why? Until you renounce serving Caesar. You shed blood for a living. We can't have you in the Christian community. That was how passionate these people were. And what are we doing now? Need to have it both, right? God's country. God, guns, Bibles, boobies, and beer. I mean, that's kind of what we've narrowed it down to, and it's very sad. Not to say that some of those things aren't wrong, but I'm sorry, we shouldn't, all right, I'm going too far now. Advancement based on individual ability. Now, again, you can start arguing all the other stuff on each side of the semantics. I'm just saying kind of how I've come into the libertarian mindset is like, yes, while I agree with these sentiments, when they say a party, I'm already opposed to that. Why? Because we're taking away the concept of what it is to be an individual. We all can have different ideas and opinions. Agora, sorry, I didn't bring that one. Agora is coming together in the community and talking, having discourse, right? Come, let us reason together, I think is in Isaiah. In the council of many, there is wisdom. Again, I'm quoting the Bible here. This is not necessarily a pagan concept. It's good because, again, if we want to seek what the Holy Spirit is wanting to tell his people, we should be having these conversations and should, and I'm not saying cause church divisions and denominations thereafter, but we should be having councils of asking ourselves theological questions, right? Because even Paul said, examine if you be in the faith. Key concept of libertarianism, again, not party. Libertarians see the individual as the basic unit of social analysis. Only individuals make choices and are responsible for their actions. So it's based on per individual. This is one that freaked people out. I had one lady write a very crazy comment. I said, I don't respect uniforms. by extension, I don't respect cops. What? And she went on a whole tangent. And I said, I respect per individual and per interactions, because I've seen a lot of videos and there's a lot of bad cops out there. And I do mean like a lot. But am I going to base that on the individual, or am I determining that on the uniform? Fortunately, the uniform's not exactly a good thing, because I've also seen other videos where I'm like, that was a nice reminder of just saying, hey, because there's other people around you, tone it down a little bit, right? That's something where I'm like, okay, cool. Because I understand now you're not doing it to be aggressive or to flirt and flex your, sorry, flex, to flex your authority over me. You're more so doing it because I care about what's going on in the community. Again, that's like a warrior. Just say, hey, be careful, be mindful. There's other people around. Okay, thank you. That's it. Again, per interaction of the individual. Don't just respect the uniform automatically. That would be what you call status programming. You have to respect authority. Well, I have to respect mom and dad, even though they've been lying to me for like 12 years about Santa Claus being real and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny, and that's all right. This is what I start calling statist codependent Stockholm syndrome. The very institution that's poisoning your food, the very institution that's poisoning your medical stuff, the same institution that's taxing you, the same institution, like, these are all things that are hurting you, as opposed to saying, you know what, I don't need them. I'm here, but I don't need them as a Christian. That blows their mind. The best way I've used this as an analogy, a statist is basically a woman that is being abused by her husband. And she goes to hang out with her gal friends, and she's showing her black eye underneath the mascara. She's got a couple of scratches and kicks from on her rib cage. And they're saying, "Girl, you should call the cops. You should get out of there. Take the kid." Well, I don't want to leave. Why not? He's hurting you. Well, yeah, but he still put a roof over my head and he fills my belly, so I can't leave Joey. Now, again, her friends are all looking at her like, this doesn't make any sense. If they're the person that's abusing you and causing you harm, wouldn't it behoove you to get out of there because it's healthy for you? And as opposed to leaving this situationship, you'd rather stay because I'm still getting a little something. It's not much, but I still get something from this, right? That's kind of what it is when you're in a relationship with the state. The essence of libertarianism is individualism, the belief that every individual is unique and has the right to his own life, liberty, and property. Murray Rothbard. So now we're going to evolve just a little bit further. The key tenets of anarcho-libertarianism. Anarcho is anarchy concepts, affiliated ideas. It's anti-statism. It's a rejection of a centralized government and all forms of authority. The only authority that we have, you might like I've recommended this guy for you before, the Bad Roman. Shout out to Craig Hargis. No king but Christ is a very common slogan of Christian anarchists. Is individual liberty, an emphasis on the individual freedom, self-determination, and the right to choose one's own path. As I told another individual, don't need to give his name, he's become a Christian. Awesome, kudos. I'm so happy about this. But he's leaning towards the Orthodox Church. Great. And again, I call it Diet Coke Catholicism. Sorry for any Orthodox people listening. And I said, now, as much as that grieves me, right? Because I've literally called him my Timothy, because it was very powerful transformation of what he was living before to now. And I said, I'm not supposed to force you to believe everything that I believe, right? Because once you're 18, you leave the house. I've told you all the things of why I don't think you should do this and tie your identity as a Christian to an institution or a denomination, but I cannot force you. I cannot coerce you to believe what I believe. I still love you. I still respect you, but I cannot say that I have to choose your path for you, right? That was your decision. I'm still here at the end of the day, but at the same time, you have the right to choose your own path. That, I think, is pretty fair, right? You're not going to force, no. Okay. That's what it should be. It's a voluntary interaction, a preference for voluntary cooperation, mutualism, you might say, and in exchange rather than coercion or a hierarchical control. Why do I have to do this? Because the king said so, the president said so. There's like, okay, well, I don't acknowledge he has authority over me.
What do we do? Beat him up, kick in his ribs. That's kind of what it comes down to. Property rights we can skip. Self-governance is basically the emphasis on local communities and individual autonomy rather than centralized authority. That's basically where I'm at. Skip that. So key ideas of libertarian anarchism. It's the opposition of the state. Libertarian anarchists reject the legitimacy of the state and its power to enforce laws. And again, N means to go into, and then force. You're going to force a law on me? I don't know. Is that law enforcement? Okay. That doesn't seem like a good. They raise taxes and use force. They believe that the state is inherently coercive and oppressive. In most cases, they are. We just have to look throughout history and how they've been abusing people. The rejection of private property. Libertarian anarchists argue that private property ownership, especially of the means of production, is a source of inequality and exploitation, right? So basically, if only one person has everything, nobody else has a shot at doing the same thing. Whereas, I think they called them sharecroppers back in the day. You'd be able to work out something where you could actually work with somebody and be like, okay, well, if I do this portion, this will be my portion, right? You're investing, right? So it's mutualism or communism, and I don't mean communism as in regulated by the state, because immediately that is what everybody jumps to thinking. Do I still have that paper here? I thought I wrote it down at one point or another. Yes, okay, so it's a commune to the extent that the funds are contributed based on the charity of the congregation and not regulated by the constrictions of the state. So if that makes any sense, it basically says, okay, we're all Amish here. Let's use that as an analogy. All early Christians. We have money. This is what actually the Hebrews will do. We put all our money in a pool, right? I'm not saying of water. We put our money in a money pool. And this all comes together, and we see how we can use this funds to help everybody in the community, right? We have orphans and widows. We're going to put some money towards that, right? We have this. We are using Caesar's currency, right? The shackles of the state is what I call it, money. We're using this for a time to help other people. We're using Caesar's own money against him to help people, as opposed to self-accumulation and elevation of status, of accumulative wealth. Because when you look up capitalism and mammon, you're going to have a fun little Google search. They do have a lot of elements that do connect with each other, that promote the idea of usury, which is where you extort somebody and you taxing money off of their labor, right? By charging them more for something. Again, I'm charging you for time. That's basically what it comes down to, right? And who created time? God. So in essence, you are taxing time, which is part of God. How dare you do that? Which is why they had the years of Jubilee. We're going to erase all debt. We're going to make you free as a slave, right? There's this concept of we're not going to hold that over your head for the rest of your life like we do here in today's America, hence state oppression. And this focus on self-organization and mutual aid. The libertarian anarchists believe that individuals can organize themselves to meet their needs without relying on a hierarchical structures or the state. They often advocate for mutual aid networks, cooperative communities, and decentralized decision-making. Now, as I was reading that book, Demanding the Impossible, there was an interesting thing that they were bringing out of a community that they did start that was very anarcho-based in New York. And when somebody basically would act up or not be very community-friendly, or they're starting to be a jerk, everybody would boycott them. Nobody will buy or sell to you. Why? Because you're a jerk. We don't even need to talk to you. At a certain point, guess what? What's the point of me staying here if everybody hates my guts? Whereas there's a benefit if you do actually help everybody else in the community, because we're not trying to be a jerk, but you're the one hoarding. For instance, let's say he had all the waterworks. We're not going to give you any food. Well, I have all the water. Yeah. So wouldn't it be in your best interest to just share that water with everybody else as opposed to hoarding it all for yourself? Yeah. Otherwise, we also are not going to help you with this. I was like, wow, it actually was working. It was a community that actually functioned. Anyways, and again, both sides, red or blue,
my master is better. The other one's better. The other ones are saying, I don't care how you live, just leave me alone. All your masters are tyrants. And the very basic is the premise of this, if you're going biblical. When Joshua, when he was getting the reins of taking over people of Israel, right? Says, your parents on the other side of the Euphrates, they worshipped all these other gods. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. As a man, the only thing master of the house, whatever, only thing I'm in charge of is my own household. And I promise you that's going to be hard enough as it is. With kids, your wife, your in-laws, you got enough issues just with that. God never designed it for you to be in charge of your neighbor and this person and that person. Just focus on your own little house, right? Being libertarian means you are free to do as you please, as long as you don't harm anyone else and take responsibility for your own actions. I think that's pretty fair. Am I boring you, Miya? I noticed a few yawns.
No.
Okay.
No.
Long day?
Yes.
Okay. Again, I do understand if I am too lengthy, just say speed it up. I get it. We can do that. Libertarianism, again, this is stuff that we do talk about, but a lot of times people is like, wait, I actually do believe that. I just never knew terms for this. It's the simple morality that we learned as children. Don't strike first, don't steal or cheat, and keep your promises. I'm not going to aggress, but I will defend, right? It's just like in the Westerns you watch, oh, I never draw first. Always make sure that, right? And I don't steal, right? Because it's not mine to take. But I will ask if I can share or if I can borrow, if I, right? Then to keep your promises. Be a person of your word, as God was a God of his word. Don't think that's asking for too much. And it's not enough to be a libertarian. We must actively be agorists. Have conversations, right? Because the community is not going to function unless you have communication. What do you mean? Well, what did we see with the Tower of Babel? God had to goof up their words so that they couldn't keep doing what they were doing. But it's good to actually separate people. Again, they're over here, we're over here, right? That doesn't mean you build a city. It just means you have tribes, right? You could be nomads. This one does this one does that. But somebody was arguing, he's like, Brandon, even the aspect of tribes isn't good. I'm like, 12 tribes of Israel. I think we had it until they went to First Samuel when they wanted to demand a king to reign over them. They were doing pretty dang good, but they didn't appreciate what was going on, right? And it's just, again, a libertarian would kick both sides. I think a lot of people don't seem to understand the premise is that when I am saying tribal, I am saying that we have to have men be warriors and every woman in the tribe, they're mothers. What do you mean? It takes a village to raise a child? Where do you think that terminology came from? But the men are all teaching and instructing. We have to be tough. We have to be strong. We have to defend. I'm going to represent myself in the sweat lodge, the powwow. I'm not going to send a representative to go talk for me. And I've used this analogy before. I'm in Connecticut. Now, it's technically labeled as a blue state, right? Now, if I was going by the Republican, if you're looking at my chart, okay, I want a Republican to speak for me. I don't think we've had like a Republican, I think even governor, I think was like early 2000s or something. Again, somebody can fact check me. I don't know. I don't care. But to say that I want that as my representative, well, we've had Blumenthal and Murphy in office for almost 20 something plus years. So if I'm Republican and I never have one person to go and represent the red guy, it's always just two blue guys based off of gerrymandering in districts, then I'm never going to have somebody say what I have to say. Right? It's going to be dictated by a party favoritism as opposed to the individual's perspective, right? Well, you just have to, that for over 20 years, that's 1/3 of my life, possibly, right? 60, 70 years. If I make it past any other complications, and I make it to 90, which personally, it's like, who wants to do that long? It's like, I've seen how crappy it's been getting. But that, you see what I'm saying? So for almost 20 years, oh yeah, you're being represented, but by a party. That's not my party, right? So that whole concept is like, that seems to be defeating the purpose. It should be one red guy, one blue guy, blah, blah, blah. So the only thing that I would advocate for a representative, and again, in an agora fashion, my father is bedridden. He can't get up because, he's got old bones or something like that. This is what he dictated to me, and I'm going to say this because we respect our elders, and I will speak on his behalf. So on. So, this kind of incentive and thinking. For the most part, everybody else will speak their own mind. You'll have a turn, everybody says something. That's technically what an agora does, right? Because you're all in this village, or the affairs of the community. Whereas with politics, we put all of our trust and hope on a man, right? And we substitute that. And then on top of that, we've bestowed this divine rule upon him, that he's as co-equal as God, and we have to obey our ruler, right? Because he is placed there by God. Eesh. Okay. That's what we're starting to really goof up, right? Because this is a lot of what we got from Martin Luther, by the way, is that he was basically being backed by all the German princes of Europe. And while he was saying we were getting away from the Catholic Church, he was basically doing the bidding of all the German princes, and thus created Protestantism. But the idea as well instilled, we have to respect lords. We have to respect all, the fiefdom system, if you will. Whereas when he was going up against the Anabaptists, they were getting persecuted by both Catholics and Martin Luther's group because they were against the idea of needing a king, and they were against the idea of needing, state-run everything. And so Luther was actually endorsing that, yeah, we need to persecute them as well. So, a rule of thumb, if a group gets wiped out and or is the martyred part of two factions, they're probably the people you want to look into, because they might have had something worth noting. The other clip I could play, but a lot of people, every time I've done this presentation, they say they can't hear him. But basically, that was Mr. Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum. And I will summarize what he said in that video. It says, we have a problem that we are dealing with. This problem and this concept of libertarianism, that party. Libertarianism. This idea that they don't need our help. Basically, to run, New World Order stuff. They don't need our help with their day-to-day lives, that they can be individuals. Now, if that's a threat for a guy that's formerly the head speaker of the World Economic Forum, what does that tell you about the concept of libertarianism being an individual, not a party? He's not scared of the party. He is scared of the individual. Because the individual says, I don't need you. And one by one, like somebody just asked Grok this question I saw, and it says, Grok, what would happen if everybody just stopped simultaneously paying taxes? It says the IRS would collapse overnight because they can't enforce it. They would literally have to get every political institution and probably the National Guard to back up just to enforce everything, in which case you probably have 95% of your population, if not more, locked up. And you can't feed, so what's going to happen? Max execution? I mean, come on, this isn't going to work. So what's going to happen? It's going to implode. But the problem is, what does the state tell you? You have to do it or we lock you up. What if we all said, we're not going to pay you. You're going to have to pick us all up. Dang it. Called your bluff, right? So, Mencken, he sums it up perfectly. The urge to save humanity, which is usually what a politician will say, right, is almost always a false front for the urge to rule. Now, what does that mean? Oh, this is the most important election of our lifetime. Why? Well, if we don't, that side's going to do this side's going to do that. What if both sides are really screwed up? And you guys are the ones that are actually ruining everything. Both sides, not one or the other. Both sides. Yeah, it's a false front because you need to create fear in order to continue the system. Now, what does the Bible tell us 365 times? Be not afraid. And when I asked my buddy point blank, and this is what I'm laughing my butt off, yes, the very definition of politics is hypocrisy. So why are you still endorsing it? My guy's better than the other one. But you just said he's a hypocrite. So it's like, from 1 minute, you just acknowledge, again, this is what I'm saying, it's kind of like that woman. You just told me he slapped you across the face and gave you a black eye. And now you're telling me, yeah, but I still love him. Hey. You can sway 1,000 men by their appealing to their prejudices quicker then you can convince one man by logic. Robert A. Heinlein. Not quite sure. Funny how every government tells the people that violence and weapons are not the answer, yet they use violence and weapons to enforce every rule. Michael Elliott. Again, the state needs to do all this stuff, whereas Christians are saying, we don't really need you. Why do you think, if I may ask you, Miya, why do you think they got rid of all the tribes in Europe?
I don't know.
Because they were a threat to Rome.
Mm.
And what did Rome technically do? It merged into a church, and then it started going and sending out missionaries, and as opposed to getting rid of paganism, they just basically adapted it and said, we're going to Christianize it. So this is now Saint so-and-so, and it used to be a pagan equivalent deity. And now it's a saint, so now it's technically holy. That's right. This is not idolatry, it's an image of Christ, so therefore it's excluded from the clause of making an idol. See what I'm saying? Like, you start with that, and then it starts evolving over time, and what happens? Well, religion controls people. You dang straight. Then we come over to America. What do? You're going to go on a reservation. I'm going to what? Dude, how are you going to put me on a reservation? I own the damn hotel. But this is what we've done. And then, as we keep going further and further west, we eventually get to a certain point where we start sending out the Buffalo Soldiers, which was basically ex-black Union soldiers that were sent to go kill all the buffalo so that the Native Americans didn't have a way of life anymore. That was their means of support. And as well, we don't want to have another incident like Custer, right? The white guy getting surrounded by all the Indians coming together. So we'll send out black men. So therefore, if anybody dies during all of this expansion idea, it'll be an Indian man versus a black man. Do you see what I'm saying? We're wiping out tribe. Why? Because now we're consolidating that way. Everybody has to conform to the state. Right? And this is happening. It's very, very subtle. But there's a reason why you want to get rid of the tribal way of life, because this was not going to conform to their new system of government. Right? So, again, you have your bred to the identify with. You have to be one of two of the political system. And you can't challenge one during the other for, your debates every year. Finally, you get to a point, if you're actually a thinker, where you're fed up with the status quo and you do not wish to associate with either one of them, right? And you dominate the political parties. You call yourself independent, right? And claim that you can neither be a Republican or Democrat. However, when elections are held, you still vote Democrat or Republican. I have a lot of people, same thing, a lot of libertarians that say, well, I'm against the idea of big government. And yet they're for the idea of big government enforcing their ideas and positions upon others. Or do I just say libertarianism was the idea, you know what? I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to force you to do what I want you to do, right? I didn't draw a border. God didn't draw a border. That's made up by man. That's made up by the state. So I'm not. What are you saying? What are you saying? There's no such thing as legal. The argument's invalid. What I say? Yeah, that's dictated by man. Anyways, however, when you do like blah, blah, this is because you're hesitant and you're not really 100% comfortable with your options and opinions. You finally get to the phase where you've conducted hours of research and have concluded that the government is out of control, and you are now 100% comfortable with your opinion, and you have claimed libertarian. Libertarianism, the party, believe in very limited government, free markets, civil liberties, and low taxes. You begin researching foundations of libertarianism philosophers, including Murray Rothbard, Friedrich Hayek, and Andrew Nepotling, Harry Brown, so on and so forth. I'm not going to recommend the other two. Ayn Rand, I just read something on her. She was having a groupie affair with one of her admirers. And basically, she was the one that suggested the idea. And I was like, I knew I didn't like her already, but this is just disgusting. And she's not very pretty anyways, so even thinking of that whole scenario was like, you really had to have no taste prior. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Anyways, that's my opinion aside from the actual. Finally, you've evolved when you get to the anarcho stage. You have been diving into the surface of libertarian philosophy of the party, right? They don't. This is where you see a lot of memes where be like the little golf ball right before it goes into the hole. Be like libertarians, they're the golf ball, and then they have the anarchists blowing on the ball so it goes into the hole. Like you're this close, but you're not quite there. Where I'm saying libertarianism is like I understand anarcho, but I also think of the concept as like, okay, before we just say we're against all rulers, what is the concept of what I believe in? Huh? I'm not losing myself as an individual here, right? I still am going to ask that question as I should, right? But I'm not going to enforce that upon others. This is where I'm laughing at the idea of the party. While I can agree with a lot of the sentiments of the thinking, a lot of times I'm seeing a lot of confused statists that are actually closet Republicans or whatever, or liberals. Varies on the scale of where they're coming from, and it's like you don't really get it quite yet. You're trying to sound cute, but you're not quite over the ridge there. So, anyways, you start reading Lysander Spooner. He was an anarcho individual from the 1800s. Leo Tolstoy, phenomenal stuff with Tolstoy. If you can get any resources on his idea with government, very good reads. And Albert Nock, I've been reading that one. I actually have it right next to me. Our Enemy, the State, Albert J. Nock. I'm not sure if you guys get a full view of that, about the light tinting it. But anyways, highly recommend people picking that up. Just to help you process what am I talking about. It's a very short book, probably about 100 something pages. Can't go wrong. Benjamin Tucker, Stefan Mullinex, and Hans Hermann Hoppe. You start to realize that the state is the problem, and you now advocate total free market, capitalism, voluntary associations, and extreme personal liberty. You believe in non-aggression principles and understand that governments are violent monopolies that steal and coerce the population. You are now an anarchist voluntarist. Now, where do you think you are at this time in life? Let's,
Wow.
let's let you talk. I've been talking way too much.
No. I mean, I never really, I guess if I had to pick, I lean towards Republican,
Yep.
but I mean, I didn't really stood 100% what a libertarian is, but I think I kind of lean more that way if I had to
Now
pick.
somebody broke it down for you. That's what I'm saying. A
Yeah.
lot of us are over here going, wait, yeah, I actually lean
Yeah.
towards that.
Yeah.
I don't identify with the party now. I'm
Right. I
understanding the
don't,
sentiments of what
but
you're talking about.
yeah.
But again, this is part of the problem. For instance, we go to school, right? And they call us a pupil. You pay money to the IRS, Iris. Money means one eye, mono eye.
Huh.
Cell phone, prison phone, iPhone. iPhone, right? So at a certain point, it's like, wait, so you're funneling me into this thinking, money, right? I'm going down this system and I'm identifying currency with my values, right? And suddenly you start losing yourself, right? You become a house divided against yourself. Whereas, again, we're going to schools that are dictated by Jesuits and the Rockefeller education system. It's diluted us to the point where we're smart enough to do the job, but just dumb enough to not ask any questions, right? That's kind of what they've evolved us to. And why would they not tell us about anarchists? For instance, did you know that the father of the author, was it Margaret Shelley, the gal who wrote Frankenstein,
Hmm.
William Godwin, he was a very prominent influencer in the anarchist movement. He wrote a lot of stuff. Never have heard that before. Oscar Wilde, anarchist libertarian. Nietzsche, anarcho-libertarian. Henry David Thoreau, disobedience. These are some pretty big names of authors, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know that guy's. Holy crap, really? As you're going to see, George Orwell and R.L.L. Tolkien. Yeah, And I'm like,
Wow.
okay, so again, I know Lord of the Rings. I know 1984, but did you ever hear their quotes of what they thought politically? And if you
Never.
did you understand what that word means, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is part of the problem is you now start explaining it in a comment section, and most people, they're too dumb because they really don't want to pick up the book. They really
Mm-hmm.
don't want to invest time. They just want to say, I'm right, you're wrong. Again, very cult minded. Now, we're fighting a culture war. Cult, worship, URE, practice. So basically, when you say culture war, worship, practice, war. For left or right? Oh, what did I just say about Proverbs, right? Go neither to the left or the right unless you stumble into evil. Right? So at a certain point, it's like, okay, hold on. So I am defending culture, things of this world, more now emphatically than I am the faith and what Christ stands for. Because now I have to filter everything that I say through a political lens, as opposed to saying as an individual, right? It's like, I can't force you, but this is what I want to help you with. We don't teach that. Now, this is something that I found interesting, but Habakkuk 2:12. Woe to him that buildeth a town, think or nation city, with blood, and establisheth it a city by iniquity. And then I saw this. It's about or some bad maps around the world or whatever. They always make something about something. And it's countries where the national anthem mentions blood. China, all of them, America. You got what? I think Scandinavia. Was that Norway at the end? Sweden? Got a bunch of African countries, Argentina. Blood, blood, blood. So you're defining your nation with blood, and this is partially why I am not too fond as well of Veterans Day and or of Memorial Day, because that is technically a form of divination. What? It's worshiping the dead. Now, yes, you can have memories. Yes, you can mourn the dead. I do get it. I'm not deposing that aspect. But the thing is, are you free based on the blood of a soldier? Or as a Christian, are you free based on the blood of Christ, the Savior? There's a big difference. And spiritually speaking, like I said before, soldiers were denied the Eucharist in the early church. Now, if people want to look into what I'm talking about before they write all their comments and saying I'm unpatriotic, this, that, and the other thing, try reading a book, Caesar and the Lamb by George Kalantzis. It's a Greek name. I'm not sure if everybody can see that, but Caesar and the Lamb. Just remember the title and type that into your Amazon. And the Early Church on Killing is another book I have over here. It'll truly convict you of just looking at what patriotism and service is, and a lot of Christians in the Roman ranks, they would literally come to the point. I think I'll mention one just for reference sake. Julianus or Julianus. Basically, after 20 something years, he's close basically to the equivalent of today of collecting his pension. They said, if you just sacrifice one more time to the emperor, you'll be fine. I'll tell them I forced you to do it. And he says, I can't do that. Why? For 20 something odd years, I've been serving both Caesar and Christ, and I found out today that I've been doing it the wrong way. He's like, well, dude, just one more time, and you'll be, no. Well, I'll kill you if you don't. Please do. Make haste of it. Like, it's come to the point where even if I compromise one more time, once I know that is the truth, as we get in James, to him that knows that is a sin, it is accounted unto him. But he would rather die as a martyr, believing, you know what, I can't offend Christ anymore and offend the state, as opposed to compromise his faith. Now, again, before you write your comments and give me a whole bunch of crap, please go buy those books. Pray to the Holy Spirit before you freaking write something and write all your patriotism, because I'm just trying to say you don't want to compromise yourself, right? Love the world or you love God. If you love the world, you're at enmity with God. That's James 4:4. But as well, things that God hates. Haughty eyes, which is something we frequently see of somebody, oh, I'm better than you. Your side's stupid. A lying tongue. That's pretty much what politicians are, and yet we admire them for some reason. Even though we say we don't, both sides are hypocrites, we still keep supporting the system. And do you not find this a bit odd? We started out in the Garden of Eden, where it says you'll know the difference between good and evil. And now we've only adapted that phrase after a little bit of time to it's the lesser of two evils. I don't think that's a coincidence. Hands that shed innocent blood. Well, it's collateral damage. You killed a kid with that drone strike. Well, yeah, no. We're not supposed to be supporting systems like that. A heart that devises wicked plans. I promise you, your government is more than complicit with that. And what fellowship does light have with darkness? Abstain from all appearances of evil. Again, I'm giving you more verses to validate. Yeah. Feet that run to evil? Yeah. I don't know. And a false witness that breathes out lies. Gee whiz, that does sound like a government system. I'm just saying. And one who sows discord amongst people. Those people over there, huh? Right? Now, granted, I'm not saying that there's not flaws or, we don't have to support this group and now we're just go kumbaya and accept everybody. No, but there's a standard within our community, right, as Christians. But we don't impose that through the state upon others because that's really destroying the reputation of who Christ is. Now, who's the first two Christian nationalists? Judas and
America?
Peter,
Oh.
right? Let's break that
Yeah.
down. What does Judas say? Well, I'm prepping this one. Judas is probably named after Judas Maccabee, the guy who started a revolt, right, during the Hellenistic time period, because they started sacrificing a pig in the altar in the temple. So they basically went and started a revolt, and he was known as Judas the Hammer Maccabee. And now, fast forward a couple hundred years, we get to a guy called Judas Iscariot. And you're walking around with a guy that is starting a revolution, right? He's very profound in thinking. He's got so much influence. And what do you think is going on through his mind? I'm named after the hammer, Judas Maccabee. Again, this is speculation here, but it's like he was the hammer. I'll be the anvil. Whatever my Messiah tells me to do, right? Wherever he says swing, I will sharpen it. I will make sure that we are having structure. And hence why his arguments of why is she wasting the money? We could put money to doing this and doing that. And I don't need that, Judas. I need us to focus on other things here, right? You always have the poor with you, but that's not what our mission is about. So what does Judas do?
Maccabee. Oh,
Judas
sorry.
Hanukkah.
I was going to say Maccabee. Is that the book in the Catholic books? Is that Maccabee?
It's not just Catholics. That's actually something a lot of
Oh.
people should read. But yeah, that's history. I was taken out by the Catholic Church.
Oh.
Yeah, but that was the origins of Hanukkah. So, you have Judas. He accepts money from the state. And I was reading this other book. It's a long title. I can't remember at the moment. Um, but he was bringing up a very interesting concept is that the very fact when Christ said, give me one of your coins, and one of the Pharisees produces one of the ones of Rome, and he says, whose face is on this?
Caesar.
According, yeah, religious leaders were not supposed to have the foreign, basically emperor's money on them when they were in the temple, because Sator, savior, was a term that was also affiliated with Caesar. Um, was what Julius Caesar basically hailed the Son of God. Is basically what that terminology roughly means. Again, people want to fact check all that. I'm going to be breaking it down in another episode for specifics on etymology, but I was basically looking into Sator and Son of God, and all of that is affiliated with Caesar in this coin. And the fact that they had that coin on their person, he already won the debate the minute they produced the coin, because he's basically saying, look what you just did. You're telling me you have a relationship with the state by having that coinage on your person in God's house.
Didn't he say pay Caesar's things to Caesar and God's things to God?
He immediately
Meaning,
follows with that. Yeah. Again,
and
materialism, money, things of this world that has his face on it, iconograph of his face, right? Christians are made in the image of God. This is made in the image of Caesar. Oh, again, I wrote that down as a note, and I'm thinking to myself, image of God, image of Caesar. We're in the image of God, but we are not part of this world. So if he's over here condemning coinage, what does that say about us? Because now it's about a spirit, right? There's forgetting the words, but one of them is basically meaning mind. I'm not going to use the bigger words. One of them is meaning psyche, the mind. Hylic is meaning skin, materialism, temporary. And what was the other one? Yeah, anyways.
I
Heart, mind, and your skin. Basically, your heart is going to dissipate. Your brain's going to become worm food at some point. But then there's that aspect of your soul, right? That's the third thing. And what is the one worth sacrificing and fighting for? The thing that lasts for eternity, right? No. Again, somebody's bringing up the other thing where maybe the concept of hell might be a little bit of a misnomer because it talks about the second death and basically perishing forever in the original Greek. So yes, hell does exist, but like your energy source, your soul, dissipated from the timeline. You don't exist anymore. Now, whether or not that's true, she was making a very good argument. This gal sent me a bunch of stuff, so I'm still looking into that. But I was like, because otherwise you're saying that Christ gave also eternity to everybody that didn't accept him, which kind of defeats the purpose of salvation. The concept of life continuing after death is a Greek concept.
I
So
was
this is
always taught, I'm sorry, I don't mean to
go ahead, go ahead. No, no,
interrupt
no.
you.
It's all for discussion here.
I was told that the coinage meant pay Caesar's to Caesar, meaning pay your taxes. Like as Christians, we still have to pay our taxes, and obey the law. In other words, obey the law, but we still have to give to God too. So,
Again, that's part of the statist aspect. Yes, again, while you're in Caesar's world, this is what Caesar wants, give it to him. It's very temporary. This is not the thing that you're supposed to be focused on, or as I keep telling everybody, 401k and this thing and that thing. We've become so fixated. We chase this carrot on the stick, and we've lost so much of the spiritual aspect because we keep chasing the coin, right? As opposed to focusing on spiritual things. Yes, you're in Caesar's world. How does Caesar function? Like again, what I'm talking about, it's a utopia. Bah, 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 bah. Yes, it's demanding the impossible as Christians. I don't think we're supposed to be having the concept of coinage, right? Which allegedly, if you're going by lore, Hermes, aka Tammuz, Nimrod's son, was the originator of coinage, creating gold to represent his dad, the sun god, Nimrod, and silver to represent Semiramis, Ashtaroth, his mother, right? The moon. Now, if that's what they created coinage for and to start controlling people, right? Because money is an illusion. It's an agreed upon lie that this is actually worth something, but it's actually not, right? At the end of the day, it's paper. What is this backed by? It's backed by gold, it's backed by this, it's backed by... At the end of the day, it's like, okay, but do I actually hold that in my hand? No. Do I actually see it? No. So the concept is it's an illusion. I hold on, I wrote this down the other day. I probably should have it readily available. Close that out. Loading. Hopefully. What is money if money is an illusion? If time is money, then time itself is an illusion. If this is the case, then we serve no purpose. But if time is God's and God is love, then love is time, and time is love. Compassion is our currency. We don't need wealth. We do need the word. We don't need a government. We do need God. We don't need the state. We need the spirit. Setting your mind on things above, not on things of this earth, is time well spent. Because if you're so focused on materialism, wealth, accumulation, things of this nature, you start becoming, again, I call money the shackles of the state. Because it's making you so fixated. Again, the state and money, divine rule, like you said, obey or those in control over you. We also have, I think it's Matthew 5:27 or 29. I can't remember which one. But Peter basically asked the question, do we obey a man or do we obey God? As I'm going to show more and more verses, you're going to start second guessing some of the stuff going, okay, that's not what I've been being taught. And a lot of that comes off of the Protestant Lutheran concept of you have to respect the rulers, you got to respect the rulers. What I'm going to show you is that might connect to the Archons when you do that. And you start dividing your loyalties between God and the fallen angels. Anyways, all the verses I just quoted, one who sows discord amongst brethren and all that, is Proverbs 6, 16 through 19. So, for instance, I think this is going to veer into what you were kind of asking, but dissecting it, if that helps. The other one I was saying was Peter, right? Peter was the second Christian nationalist. Because what was he trying to do? Okay, so while Judas went the route, I'm going to go seek materialism, right? I'm going to lobby for myself.
That's all for our free side. To listen to the rest, head over to my Patreon, sign up today for the Plus show, and get the full experience.
Sure.
But where can people come and find you? Where can they get more of your work?
Manna Daily Podcast, Spotify, Rumble, and YouTube, and that is 2 ends.
So out of my head, walking the edge. What am I falling into? Losing my cool, breaking my rules.